The dance of democracy has begun. In the month of November, the fate of 5 states and over 600 assembly seats will be decided. 3 Hindi heartland states, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. 1 economically racing southern state of Telangana and a crucial state part of the NDA alliance at the centre, Mizoram. The big questions: will Congress be able to keep the confidence in Bhagel in Chhattisgarh amid Maoist movements and the Mahadev betting scam? Will the Modi guarantee work with the push from welfare schemes and women voters? And what does this cage fight with BJP and Congress mean for the future of the India alliance as we get an eye on the general elections? In this episode of the Morning Brief, we get you the political playbook as the Economic Times Politburo breaks it down on why you should be watching these elections very carefully.
In the case of Congress, whether they are able to halt the Modi juggernaut, or in the case of BJP, do we see new satraps or new leaders emerging who can carry the baton forward?
For the Congress party, delivering at least 2-3 states in this election is very important to cement its position as the leader of the coalition in India alliance.
Oft repeated saying in the state is, whoever wins Bastar wins the state. Last election, that was more of BJP lost Bastar rather than Congress winning Bastar.
Mizoram, the importance has grown up a bit because there is an entry of a third party. Most of the political pundits can't make out what the result will be.
The polling has kicked off. It's November 7th. I'm your host Anupriya Nair and you're listening to The Morning Brief. So let's get straight into election battleground. Joining us first from the ET Political Bureau, Pranab Dhal Samant, the executive editor of ET Politics. Pranab, welcome to the Morning Brief. And let me just kickstart with, why are these state elections more crucial or even more thrilling than the round that we saw in 2018, one would say?
See, the point is, firstly, let us look at these elections often are dubbed as some kind of a semi-final because they often occur 6 months before the general elections. That I think we should set that aside, because even last time around, the results over here did not quite mirror themselves in the results in the general elections. Having said that, these states, as you rightly put it, are very crucial. There are 3 heartland states where actually the BJP and the Congress face off against each other, which is quite unique to say the UP or Bihar matrix. Here it's a direct fight between BJP and the Congress. So if you look at the 3 heartland states, it tells you about how the BJP and the Congress face off in state elections, whether their local leaderships in respective parties are strong enough to sort of ride on their own steam and not depend on any larger campaign narrative. In the case of Congress, whether they are able to beat the Modi juggernaut or halt the Modi juggernaut, or in the case of BJP, do we see new satraps or new leaders emerging, local leaders emerging who can carry the baton forward? Similarly, you have Mizoram in the northeast, because of what happened in Manipur and the ethnic issue which we are facing because of refugee influx from Myanmar, acquires a certain internal security and larger security significance. And Telangana, because of the fact that the rub-off from the Karnataka elections on Telangana has been such that the rising graph of the BJP has kind of fallen, and the Congress is sort of regaining its old position and is actually challenging the regional party TRS. So each of these elections hold different meanings.
And we'll get to each of those elections separately as well, with those tracking it closely from the ET Political Bureau. But I want to get and address the trend of the anti-incumbency, Pranab, as well. Chhattisgarh, a Congress government with a leader like Bhagel, who's still not on posters as a CM candidate. Madhya Pradesh elections won by Congress, then a deflection, and now BJP government. Rajasthan has had more political plot twists than even an M. Shyamalan movie. So how does one grapple with anti-incumbency in the Hindi heartland states, and what does it really mean for the BJP and Congress?
Look, there is no doubt that there is anti-incumbency, at least definitely in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. Chhattisgarh, one can say it is moderate, but I won't say it is absent. The question is, how do parties cope with this anti-incumbency? Let's sort of game this. If you say there is an anti-incumbency against a certain MLA, you remove that MLA and put another candidate. You have to then game that whether the person who has lost his ticket or her ticket will stand as a rebel and maybe funded by someone else just to cut your votes. So that brings you down to how close are your elections. So that's the game which has actually been going on. If you look at the Rajasthan election last time, it was Gehlot who was able to fill in the blank by getting some independents to come and support. Now, we later come to know that those independents had a dotted line arrangement with Mr. Gehlot. So satraps also play their own games in trying to buck the anti-incumbency by creating rebel candidates of the sort. Having said that, the real issue, and that's what nobody has been able to really capture, is whether this anti-incumbency is of the sort, say, what do I compare? Say, the sort which removed Sheila Dikshit from Delhi, where it's a landslide. I think over there, the jury is still out. So anti-incumbency is there. How each one has played it, I think everybody has been a little bit more defensive than offensive because each one wants to protect their own position. The local leadership wants to be in a position that they can have a shot at the CM. So they want the seats to be there and thereabouts. A clear landslide victory would give the central high commands more power. So it's complicated, and which is why these battles are looking narrower despite incumbents.
Pranab, what goes hand in hand with incumbency or anti-incumbency is the veterans of both the big parties. The last question I want to ask you is about the faces we're seeing on the posters. A lot of the veterans are over the crucial 70 mark. Raman Singh, KCR in the south, Kamal Nath turned 77 this month itself, Vasundhara Raje, Gehlot, across party lines. Could one say this state election is also going to be sort of the last war cry of the veterans?
It's a good point, and I would, my short answer would be perhaps yes. So a lot of these guys are fighting for their survival and maybe their legacy. Let's look at the BJP, for instance. Its approach in Karnataka was to remove Yadurappa before the election and sort of go out there and give a message that we want to put in a new leadership. But that sort of opened the Pandora's box, and a lot of the old people rebelled. And contenders said, oh, why would you go straight to the young? We've also been in the party for long enough. You should consider us as next. And the BJP had to deal with a strong rebel situation, which frankly cost them the election. So here they are not doing anything of the sort. But knowing well that these old people, in the case of even Congress, you don't want them to go against you. They will have their last shot, as they say. And I think in the case of Congress, if these veterans sort of win and come into power, they'll seek to play a larger role nationally, given the fact that the Congress High Command is under scrutiny for its leadership. In case of BJP, if some of the veterans lose, it will allow the BJP High Command to sort of experiment with new leadership. They're quite willing to do that. In case they do come to power, then the onus of delivering the Lok Sabha also will fall on these leaders very soon. So they will remain under pressure. I don't think there will be any challenge to the central leadership, like in the case of Congress. As for the regional parties are concerned, it may be a reality check on whether Congress can be a trusted ally moving ahead, because if the Congress is resurging, then many of the old stalwarts will have to think about the future of their party, which are essentially family-run parties. And the second generation may not be as sort of well-tuned with the public as the older generation. So those kind of issues will sort of bedevil the regional parties. Some of them have addressed it, like Rashtriya Janata Dal, or you can say even YSR Congress. But many of the parties, like the TRS and others, will have to address this issue more carefully.
But before we head to the second generation, the current generation is in a cage fight which is largely between the BJP and Congress. A familiar war cry, but the strategies seem to be changing, with the Congress taking a page out of the BJP's book and going micro into local issues. With a lot more to prove and a lot more to lose for the Congress as being the ruling party in 2 out of the 5 states, we shift focus on what their strategy is going to be like. Joining us now from the Political Bureau, C.L Manoj, who has tracked the Congress for many, many years and is a senior editor at Economic Times. Manoj, welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you.
Manoj, take us through what's at stake for Congress and what's the strategy looking like in these states.
As you are aware, out of 5 states, Congress is already ruling 2 states, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh. So they have an additional task of retaining these 2 states. And also there is a challenge of facing the incumbency issues which any government is bound to accumulate during their 5-year stint. For the Congress party, it is also an opportunity to try and cash in on the perceived anti-incumbency burden of the BJP government in Madhya Pradesh. As you are aware that the Congress had won the 2018 election and had formed the government, but just in about 1 year, there was a section of the Congress led by Jyotiraditya Scindia crossed over to the BJP, and that's how the Congress government fell. So for them, it is an attempt to get back to Madhya Pradesh, and Telangana, as part of the United Andhra Pradesh, has been one of the most traditional bases of the Congress party before they lost both the states after the bifurcation in 2014. So for them, it's important to get back to the action in Telangana. At least the reports so far saying that they were facing a prospects of being slipped to the 3rd position behind the BJP, but of late seems they have certainly come back as the main challenger of the BRS in Telangana. As far as the Mizoram in Northeast, the election, as you know, is happening in the context of the prolonged unrest and violence in the neighboring Manipur. So everybody is looking to see whether the Manipur incidents will have an impact on the people of Mizoram. And Congress had long ruled most of the Northeast states before they lost it to the BJP or its allies one by one. So for the Congress, these elections in each of the states has its own importance, and that's how they are looking at this election.
Manoj, you touched upon a very important part about the alliances, which is something that Pranab was also mentioning ahead of the general elections. What role are these state elections going to play in terms of gathering momentum with the India alliance, which is sort of on the sidelines right now?
This is the major rounds of state election happening after the formation of the opposition alliance called India Bloc Alliance. So therefore, for the Congress party, delivering at least 2-3 states in this election is very important, not just in terms of reinforcing its position against BJP before the Lok Sabha election, but also to cement its position as the leader of the coalition in India alliance. Because if they manage to beat BJP in a couple of states or more in this round of election, they can naturally project itself as the main anti-BJP opposition party, and therefore they can assert its leadership role within the India alliance. But just in case Congress fails to perform as effectively as they are trying to do, then obviously within the India alliance, many other regional parties would try to assert their position and try to kind of elbow out the Congress to the second fiddle or to the margins. So as we will be seeing a lot of seat sharing talks and the bargaining for seats for the Lok Sabha elections within the India alliance after this round of election, it is important for the Congress to do well in this state so that it can deal with its allies in terms of bargaining more effectively.
Manoj, if I had to ask you to break it down into sort of the real issues that Congress has to battle with in some of these states?
The real issues are 2. One, in each of the 5 states, the ruling party's last 5 years' performance will be the main yardstick for the voters, whether how much of incumbency burden these ruling parties have accumulated and how much the opposition parties can cash in on by tapping this anti-incumbency against the ruling party, and secondly by wooing the political audience, the voters, with their own promises. So in this election we all see a very heavy dose of social welfare schemes being promised to the voters. There are promises of free electricity, subsidized LPG cylinders. There is a big way of trying wooing the women folks, especially the women heads of the family, with the promise of monthly payment. So I think this election we are seeing, especially the Congress party, is trying to go to the people with a very heavy bouquet of social welfare schemes. Sometime in the past, the Prime Minister had come out very strongly against what he thinks is tendency to offer too much of freebies. But even BJP has come out with its own promises, which they call Modi guarantees as against Congress guarantees. So we are seeing the politics is increasingly getting into a lane where the parties tend to offer the voters a lot of goodies, economic welfareism. Probably this will be a test of this election. The political parties which are offering this kind of promises, if they manage to win, then the tendency will go to make much bigger welfare schemes, promises in the coming Lok Sabha election.
Many promises and many slogans, and one of those is coming as the big Modi guarantee in the state of Chhattisgarh, where the BJP is hoping to replace the reigning slogan of the sitting CM Bhagel, which is Bhagel's bharosa. Chhattisgarh goes to polls today, that's Tuesday, in its first phase, and the second phase on November 17th. The BJP is largely dependent on PM Modi's image to grab more seats in the 90-seat Chhattisgarh Assembly. What makes this tribal-dominated state stand out, as ET's political editor From.Pranab Dhal Samant also highlighted, is its focus on internal security, with a heavy naxal belt going to polls in the very first phase. There are multiple polling booths for the very first time across Bastar. Around 60,000 security personnel have been deployed for the smooth conduct of polls in the division, which has 12 assembly seats. Nidhi Sharma, who's been tracking the region closely, has trekked to some of these new polling booths, some which are 2 to 3 kilometers away within a jungle and in schools that remain largely shut. Nidhi, welcome back to the TMB, this time in avatar of a guest. Let's start up with what the political climate and complexion is looking like across Chhattisgarh.
Thank you, Anupriya. I'll speak first about Bastar. 20 seats. Actually, Bastar region has 12 of the 20 seats. And the oft repeated saying in the state is whoever wins Bastar wins the state. So last time Congress had actually won 11 of the 12 seats in Bastar and swept the state. Later on in a by-election, they won Dantewada seat. So right now, if we look at it, Congress holds 12 of the 12 seats in Bastar division. So it's a very tough act to keep up with. If you hold all 12, how to hold on to the 12 when you are the incumbent party? So as I traveled, Anupriya, in that region, I realized that there is fair amount of anti-incumbency due to the ground level, very micro issues there. And it would be very unlikely that Congress would be able to hold 12 of the 12 seats. So BJP has made serious inroads in the region. Another impression that I got of that region was that it is more of, last election, that it was more of BJP lost Bastar rather than Congress winning Bastar. So even when there was a wave of Congress, when it won 68 seats, and right now, because of by-elections, Congress actually holds 71 of 90 seats in the assembly. So the margins of victory in that entire region were very slim. Like in some seats, it was just 1,500. And with a resurgent BJP in that region, it will be a little tough for Congress to hold on to all the 12 seats.
I want to talk about a little more about this cage fight with the BJP and Congress in the state. On one side, there's Raman Singh ranking among the top veterans of the BJP, and the posters now have the Modi guarantee. On the other side, there's Bhupesh Bhagel, who swept the confidence onto his side in 2018. Will that bharosa sustain with the state?
Very interesting, Anupriya. If you see how the Congress won the election, I'll take you back to 2013. So, BJP had been in power for two consecutive terms, and there was a Maoist attack called the Jhiram Ghati. It was a deadly attack in 2013, in May 2013, just months before the November elections in Chhattisgarh. That wiped the entire leadership of the Congress. Now, what many expected was that Congress would get the sympathy vote in 2013. Now, what Congress could not muster was that they were leaderless. They didn't have a leader and they could not actually win the state. So that was the closest the Congress had got to power was, but still BJP won 49 seats and Congress won 39. There was very little difference in the vote share at that time. And at that time, after the elections, Congress put its faith in Bhupesh Baghel. Now, that was the time when Congress had Ajit Jogi, the first chief minister of Chhattisgarh, who was at the helm of affairs. And somehow the party leadership blamed him for sinking the Congress in the state. And Bhupesh Baghel, a very powerful old Congress hand, was brought in December after they lost the elections. And they put all their faith in Bhupesh Baghel. He's a man of the grassroots, right? He's risen from the student politics days to now as the chief minister. So in 2018, Congress started very early. Now, what the Congress did was many compare it with the BJP model at the center, which they have replicated, tapping into a very Chhattisgarhia identity. Now, Chhattisgarh is a very agrarian, rural, economy. So what they did was in 2018, when you traveled through the states, you realized the states had really good highways. It had good national highways and good, state highways. What people were really struck by was, I remember traveling in 2018, there were stray cattle. So when your car is moving, it would move at a speed and suddenly brake because the stray cattle would be sitting on the national highways and there would be no way to go. And you realize what was happening was the villagers did not have place for their cattle to stay. So if they would graze in a land and then go into the fields and destroy the crops and then come and sit on the roads. So you actually were looking at an agrarian economy. What the Congress started doing was, in May, it started promising place called Gothan, a dedicated place that we will provide every Gram Sabha with a dedicated space for your cattle. They can come, they can graze, they can stay here. And we will also give you money when we acquire the dung of the waste of the cattle. So we will even give you money for that if the Congress were to come to power. One step was that. And then, Bhupesh Baghel went even more micro. They realized that paddy is the chief crop of Chhattisgarh. And they promised, over and above every quintal of rice procured by the government, we will give you 600 rupees over and above the MSP, which is set by the center. Now, Raman Singh government was already doing that. What the Congress promised was, rather than 300 rupees that the Raman Singh government was promising, we'll give you 600 rupees. So they doubled it. Now, that is something that they have done till date. Plus, all this, an OBC leader was promising. And for the first time, the entire party rallied behind an OBC leader. About 40 to 45% of the population there is OBC. Right now, the switch is complete in the sense that right now they haven't gone with their poster boy of Bhupesh Baghel. They are now fighting under a collective leadership. Now, a lot happened for the 5 years they were in power. So T.S. Singhdeo is the deputy chief minister now. Now, there was a big tussle between the two when they were declaring the chief minister of the state. What T.S. Singhdeo camp, he hails from Sarguja region. So his constituency is Ambikapur, and he's considered a royal. He's from the royal family of Sarguja. This was actually the crisis became very similar to what happened to Congress in Rajasthan. But in this, most of the majority of the MLAs were on Bhupesh Baghel's side. But what I sensed during my travel was that at present Congress is actually fighting against a collective, under a collective leadership, and all the posters have not just Bhupesh Baghel, T.S. Singhdeo as small stamp size at the bottom of the posters. They actually have Rahul Gandhi and the AICC in charge, Kumari Selja, on the posters, which is very curious, because when you have a sitting chief minister who's quite popular, you would expect a party to use his charm and his following and make a mark.
While the Congress is definitely trying to, make a mark again in this, one thing that is making a mark amongst the political conversations is the big Mahadev scam, which finds itself, the big betting app, which is finding itself at the doorsteps of CM Bhagel's office at this point. How big a conversation point and how big a corruption charge, and how is that clouding the entire campaign right now?
So that's massive. So this Mahadev scam, yes, it has reached Baghel's office. Even before that, it had reached Baghel's doorstep. So last year, the ED and CBI had, raided bureaucrats, and a person working in an official working in Baghel's office had actually, come into the net. Earlier this year, they actually took in their net Vinod Verma and his family. He's the brother-in-law of the chief minister. In fact, he's considered in the Chhattisgarh circles the Chanakya of the 2018 victory in Chhattisgarh, and he was closely involved in Congress campaign in Himachal Pradesh, and he's a very much sought after backroom person. Now it has reached the CM's doorstep. Now what the Congress says off record is that it is a bid to actually cut the financial resources, cut the financial strings so that they don't run those successful campaigns. Now that does affect, I feel that when I was hearing the conversations, I do feel that the corruption, charges somewhere, somehow create an impression that the conduct of the government has not been above board. But how much of it is sticking to the chief minister himself remains to be seen. We need to watch it closely, because the core Congress voter still believes that the Congress is being targeted by the BJP government at the center through the central investigative agencies. Now, in what the government has in Chhattisgarh, what the Congress has actually done is made its entire campaign digital. So, and not just you'll see the buzz of digital campaign; it's immense. So, on Friday, there was this entire day was spent. So the day began with the top leadership of the Congress talking about Pramod. So people were left like, the Bhupesh Baghel Twitter handle actually said, Pramod ne kya kaha aur unhone Pramod ko kya kaha. Again, the top leadership of the Chhattisgarh Congress did the entire tweet like this, left everybody thinking. The entire media was so curious. They were taking bites as to, who is Pramod. So half the day was spent with people wondering, is Congress going to actually unearth a scam? Now, this was the day when Amit Shah was in Chhattisgarh releasing the manifesto of BJP. So by afternoon, they unveiled an entire digital campaign completely focusing on the government's achievements. So where they said that Pramod is a beneficiary of the government scheme. And they actually tapped into that panchayat character. They actually brought the actor who says, Dekh raha hai Binod. So they actually did that entire campaign, and he says, Dekh raha hai Pramod. And Pramod happens to be the beneficiary of the government schemes. So they are keeping it absolutely development driven, whereas the BJP government at the center is trying to make it a corruption issue.
Well, that battle will be fought out in two phases. One today, November 7th, and the other on November 17th, when Chhattisgarh goes to polls once again. Joining in Chhattisgarh on November 17th will also be the second Hindi heartland state, Madhya Pradesh, where the 230-seat assembly will go to polls in a single-phase election, followed by Rajasthan on November 23rd and finally Telangana on November 30th, both being single-phase polls. But moving focus and travelling across now to the northeast, where Mizoram is also going to polls today. Voters will be voting in a single phase for all 40 constituencies. The big question is, will Congress be able to come back and make a mark in a place that was once upon a time a Congress bastion? Will the BJP make inroads, and what does it mean for the NDA alliance in the northeast going ahead? Joining me now to take us through the complexions and the political plays in the northeast is Bikash Singh. Bikash, who's been travelling extensively through the region and has covered the region for many, many years. Thank you, Bikash, for joining us. Bikash, I want to start up with, if you could just lay it out for our listeners, what makes these elections in Mizoram, this year in particular, so significant?
See, Mizoram has one significant aspect. In 2018, Mizoram was the last state where Congress was in power in Northeast. And Northeast traditionally has been a Congress bastion. In 2018, when Congress made an exit from Mizoram and BJP won one seat, and the ruling MNF, which is Mizo National Front, it was basically a protest movement which eventually grew into a political party. The movement of Laldenga, it's very famous in the history, and it ultimately culminated in signing a Mizo Accord. And ever since then, Mizoram is a state in India which is reaping the benefit of peace. They say the peace dividend. Okay, so one of the most peaceful states of India. The elections here has been always been between two parties, say the regional party MNF and the Congress. But this election, the importance has grown up a bit because there is an entry of a third party which has gone strong. That is called ZPM, Joram People's Movement. And with the coming of Joram People's Movement, Congress has taken a beating, no doubt. Even Congress leader like Shashi Tharoor has admitted that they have gobbled up Congress votes. So the whole election this time looks like a triangular fight. Most of the political pundits can't make out what the result will be. However, BJP too is looking strong in a sense that they may improve on their 2018 tally. And one more thing, the ruling MNF government is a part of NDA. And it has been a very troubled ally in the sense that time to time they have voiced their grievances against the NDA. So Mizoram election in a way has its echoes in other northeastern states also, because next year we are all going to have elections in Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim together with Lok Sabha polls.
Because each state comes with their own set of micro issues. With Chhattisgarh, it's an agrarian state, a lot to talk about paddy and the welfare schemes. Rajasthan is a lot more about unemployment and the troubles there. But with Mizoram, the topics of conversations have been quite different. In 2018, it was liquor, and this time around, it's drugs. How grave a problem is it, and how big a conversation point in the political dialogues have drugs become?
See, it is grave in the sense, last time, Congress was voted out of power because Congress lifted the prohibition law. Prohibition was something which was backed by the church. And in a way, Congress defied the church. Those who analyzed the political situation, they said Congress paid the price for it. Now, this has been always a debate in Mizoram, drugs versus alcohol. Now, ever since then, drug abuse cases are on rise. According to NGOs, it has been on rise. There was an NGO who even met Rahul Gandhi while he was here. And Rahul Gandhi even mentioned in his speech that he met an NGO, and drug abuse is something that needs to be tackled. And that is the one reason that most of the political parties, or almost all the political parties in their manifestos, have said that they will aspire, they will work for drug-free Mizoram. And one very important aspect of the NGOs have been pointing it out, that the drug availability in Mizoram has gone up ever since the refugee problem has started. The refugee problem, I mean, ever since the military junta took over the control, the regime of Myanmar, the flow of drugs has increased. And if you go by the statistics of our Assam Rifles who mans this border, they have huge kind of, they have made huge kind of seizures in last couple of years. And even while I'm talking to you, on Friday also they arrested a Myanmari national and they seized the contraband. So, Mizoram is very close to Gondar Triangle, which is again the hub of the drug route. So drug is an important issue out here, and it is being played out in this election in a very big way.
Because before we let you go, I want to get a sense of how the entire troubles around Mizoram and Myanmar are playing out in the political arena for Mizoram.
If you go by the geography of it, Mizoram shares border with Myanmar and Manipur. And the hills of Manipur, especially the Churachandpur and all this, have a contiguous area with Mizoram. Those people residing there, the Kukis, Zo, Mar, they share ethnicity with people of Mizoram, and people in the Myanmar side, a sizable population, they are Chin, they too share an ancestry with the people of Mizoram. So, when the violence in Manipur took place around, say, May 3, around 13,000 people are now taking shelter in Mizoram. And these people, including the 10 tribal MLAs, they basically have stationed some kind of station here. When the Mizo Accord was signed, one of the important aspects of a Mizo Accord was their aspiration was Greater Mizoram. So the Greater Mizoram basically means the Mizo inhabited, the Zo inhabited people staying in Myanmar, Bangladesh, Manipur, and these areas. So in this election as a whole, if you go by the year of it, the ruling party has in a way stood with the people of Manipur, saying that they have been victimized. The tribals there has been given a raw deal by the government there, whom they claim is out and out a Meitei supported government. So the influx from Myanmar, after the military junta took over, and the ethnic violence of Manipur is having great ramifications in the elections here.
From Mizoram, which finishes polls in a single day, focus will shift to Madhya Pradesh, which will wrap up voting for all 230 seats in a single day on November 17th, where an incumbent BJP will look to hold on to power, while a veteran Kamal Nath vows to be back on centre stage. The election wagon then rolls through Rajasthan on November 23rd, where Gehlot and Raje will battle it out for votes in a state that has been hit hard by unemployment, and the month closes out in Telangana, which will see its third ever election, with KCR, the veteran, hoping to make a victory call in what many are calling his swan song election. But as the pace picks up towards general elections, it's clear that the Chunav Par Charcha is far from over. Watch this space for more. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of The Morning Brief. A big thanks to the entire ET Political Bureau, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from them as we go along. A shout out for the team that helped put this together, Vinay Joshi on production and Amit Regi on the sound. Here's wishing you all a great week ahead and a happy Diwali for everyone celebrating.